Today, in case you didn't know, is the 11th day of Christmas. So I greet you this morning saying, Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Oh, let's try again, just like with the kids. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Oh, much better. But I'm guessing that for most of you, it feels like Christmas time has passed. Because all the signs of Christmas are disappearing around us. Tomorrow, students and teachers will trundle back into their classrooms, ready to pick up learning where they left off. And tomorrow, too, offices will once again be buzzing with voices and phone calls and the clacking of keyboards as everybody gets to go back to work. And twinkly lights that decorated all of the lawns and the houses for the past month have started to be wound up and stored away. And those evergreen living trees in our houses have started to be carted to the curb, leaving their dead needles in a path behind them. Leaving behind all for us to see is yellowing, drab lawns and the bleak, rainy days of winter ahead. Though we in the church will move into the season of Epiphany, the season of light, this Tuesday on January 6th, truthfully, I am tempted to try and stay at the manger of Christmas a little bit longer this year. I'm tempted to try to cuddle up in all of that hay that is scratchy, but I pretend that it's not, with a cup of cocoa in one hand to keep me warm and Jesus' chubby fingers wrapped around my other hand. As choirs of angels lift their voices up to heaven in melodious strains, providing background music over my head, and all will seem right with the words. But as we move into the second week of Christmas, if I tried to do that and stay by Jesus' manger, I would actually find myself sitting alone this Christmas. Because this second week of Christmas, Jesus has left the manger behind already. The angels are no longer singing out above. The Magi from the east have already started their journey through their back roads home, and life has begun to return to normal, full of mounting pressures, self-seeking and fearful leaders, and frantic parents just trying to find the best for their children. And while the image of baby Jesus squirming in his crib is idyllic and peaceful on Christmas Eve, that's not where God chooses to stay, nor what God came into this world to do. And instead, we are confronted this Sunday with a part of Christmas, with a part of Jesus' birth that we don't often tell to our children. Notice I left it out of the story I told to the kids, or even depict with our beautiful lawn ornaments. But it's a story that we do need to hear. We read in the gospel this morning that Joseph is visited once again by an angel in a dream. An angel who gives him an alarming and unwanted message. Herod, the king of Israel, the king actually of the Jews, is afraid of your child Jesus and will soon begin to search for him. He will try to put him and all the baby boys in Bethlehem to death. If you want your baby boy to live, get up and leave the comfort of your bed now and go to Egypt. And with that unwanted news from the angel, Jesus is yanked from his crib in the middle of the night as his family flees from their temporary home in Bethlehem and crosses the border into Egypt, the land where Mary and Joseph's and Jesus' ancestors had sought refuge once before, and then they were eventually made into slaves in Egypt. But it is there in that land that now Mary and Joseph and Jesus are told to wait and to live until the angel comes again. before he is even 2 years old. Jesus, God with us, has already become a threat to rulers and the power brokers of his world. He has already become homeless, a refugee and a wanderer, with an uncertain future lying in front of him, living in a place that holds a history of fear and pain and anxiety for his people. This isn't where we would expect to find God on Christmas. Yet that is where God rushed to dwell almost as soon as he came into this world. But perhaps given the promised hopes and expectations for the Messiah that we have heard all fall as we travel through the Old Testament and heard from the prophets, perhaps from the promise that the Messiah would come to save his people walking in darkness, perhaps given where we already know this baby, now a toddler, is headed in his too short life to come, we shouldn't really be too surprised that God has made his home in a land of exile, in a land of oppression and of hardship for his people, or that he grew up as an outsider, a foreigner, an undocumented immigrant who doesn't count in the halls of power except as a nuisance to be squashed. But to be honest, God's desire to make a home with those who are still searching for a home didn't really mean a whole lot to me except as some nice theology to tell about Jesus until I met a man named Alfred. I met Alfred probably about 10 years ago on a cold February evening on the north side of Chicago. He was assigned to be my partner through the African Immigrant Center where I'd signed up to be an ESL sort of helper. It was my task to work with Alfred as he tried to navigate his new life in the United States and to work on English. For he had recently arrived in Chicago after living in a refugee camp in Ivory Coast. We met each Saturday morning at the library near his apartment. Usually he would arrive before I did, and I would find him waiting outside on the sidewalk for me, even during the hottest days of summer when he could have gone inside to take refuge in the air conditioning. But after we got to know each other a little better, we decided to add some field trips to our regular English language meetings. I knew that he was a bit timid whenever he entered the library, letting me lead the way to find a table or talk with the person at the desk when we got him the library card. But I figured it was just the newness of the library that made him hesitate. But when we started on those field trips together, exploring his new life in Chicago together, I experienced what it is truly like to live as a stranger in your new homeland. Everywhere we went was a new and daunting experience. One time we went into a mall in downtown Chicago, and getting on an escalator, a moving staircase, was a new and troubling experience. Entering the glitz and the largeness of Macy's department store was overwhelming. Ordering a sandwich at McDonald's was a struggle to be understood, and even eating his first ice cream sandwich was a shock of sweetness to his tongue. Everywhere we went, everything we did was new, and he was a stranger. We tried to talk about his home where he had come from in Liberia, but I couldn't get much out of him. He had fled his home in the rural part on the coast of Liberia in West Africa when civil war had erupted 15 years before. And he had made his way to a refugee camp in Ivory Coast, where he had met a woman with whom he had a son. But they were never officially married in that refugee camp. So when his number was called to immigrate, He got on a plane to the United States and was given an apartment in Chicago, and he never was able to talk to his son or his wife again. And he had no way of contacting them or finding out where they had ended. He wanted to go home badly. In the same breath that he would tell me he missed his home and he wanted to go there, his voice would drop to a whisper and he would say, "But I can't ever go home again." His family was there no more. Neither was his life back in Liberia, and so he would forever be searching for his home. Some of our sisters and brothers in this congregation have had the experience of upending the place that they call home and spent their lives making a new home wherever they have landed. Others of you have never had to make a new place your home, having lived in the same area your entire life. But that doesn't mean that you've never faced the challenge of finding a new home in other ways. It might be the loss of a job and the desperate search for a new one that has sent your sense of self reeling off from your own place. Or it could be that not so often talked about challenge of transitioning from going to a place of work each and every day into the new experience of being retired, where it can often be difficult to figure out your sense of purpose and place. Or it could be that you find yourself feeling alone in the struggles of this world, uncertain if you will ever find your way through illness, through messy relationships, or through loneliness. If you will ever move from feeling like an outsider looking in on life into one of those people who is always laughing and confident and happy and comfortable, who seem to glide so effortlessly through life. But that sense of homelessness, that discomfort, that not being at ease in ourselves and in our world, of wandering in a strange land or seeking a home, even when we think we are at home, is why God has left the manger this morning to come into our world and to seek out the barren places and the lost people searching for a place to call home. For God travels through this life with those who are lost, with those who are lonely, with those who are exiled, and those who are foreigners who never feel like they fit into this life. God has come to be with those who never get to go home again. No matter how much we wander, God has come to make a home with us, bearing within his body all that the promise of home holds out for us: boundless love and endless grace for all people of all places and of all time, no matter where we live or where we have wandered. God is with you this Christmas, no matter how far from home